Check, check, check. Check, check. Go on recording. If that
Okay.
affects my ability to do that later. I'm going to make you host, and then you should be able to do everything you want.
Okay.
There we are.
Video's up. And now I should be able to share my screen. All good.
All right, great.
How's the weather down at the beach? Pretty good?
Oh, it's beautiful. 75, sunny. Warm
So
enough.
Saturday, we got 5 inches of snow here with 60-mile-an-hour winds and lost power. And today it's 71 degrees and all the snow's gone. Yeah, and we wonder why our allergies and our sniffling and sneezing.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So I heard that folks glad to share our messaging today. If my screens will work. There we go. Hit the right button. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 2 things. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with CFO Solution and the PCS Forum to share best practices, best processes, and better partners to work with to basically share among private company CFOs and controllers, et cetera. So we spent about 25 minutes on 2 sessions. The first one's going to be managing real estate strategically. I'll define that and run through that. The second one will be a very timely topic. We pivoted on topics to talk about reducing energy usage and reduce the cost you pay. And as Paul said, we presented that to about 200 CFOs this morning and very well received. So let's, we'll go use the chat room if you can. I might miss it, so give me some patience there. So I'm going to skip over these. We exist to share best practices. We're not a consulting service. We don't charge you. Paul, PCS Advisors puts this forum together at his expense to share information, share ideas. If you have any questions, give me a call. My contact information is on the last slide. It's all over the website at cfosolution.org. And we're glad to introduce you to our subject matter experts that we have around the country. So if you haven't been part of this group for the last couple months, we've covered a number of topics. You can read the slide. And I appreciate the calls and emails we've gotten. I appreciate that we had a chance to work with some of you to implement these and refer you to our smart partners. I'll just give you a very contemporary update. A lot of you know what ERTC is, the Employee Retention Tax Credit. A lot of you are frustrated like I am for my company. By the way, I am a full-time CFO of an engineering skyscraper firm in New York City. I've got a $500,000 ERTC that's now 6 months late. I can't even get a status from the IRS. We've now partnered with a lender who will lend 75 to 90% of your credit, basically do a line of credit against your ERTC for what I think are reasonable fees and reasonable monthly interest rates. So if you're looking for cash and you want to borrow against your inbound IRS receivable, get in touch with me. We can probably help you out. So on the topic today, I've got to assume everybody on the call either leases or owns their real estate. So we're going to talk about what I think is a pretty novel idea on how to manage it strategically, from a CFO standpoint. So I'll start with the first one. If you own a building, and you can almost say that if we lease a building in a long-term lease, if you think you love the location you're at, that it's perfect, however you define perfect, could be location, could be for your customers, your staff, the size, the improvements you've made to it. If you love that building, explain to me why you would continue to have 3 or 5 year leases on that building. It's as simple as that. If you want to be there, you have a landlord, a third party controlling your destiny on a place you want to be. It's no different than your home. If you love your home, you want to raise your kids there, you want to retire there, why would you rent it? It's the same thing for buildings, except it's worse because your whole business relies on it. And you're the guy or the gal in charge of rewards, resources, and risk. So even if you have a real estate manager or your CEO likes to play real estate manager, we're going to talk about what the CFO should be doing to manage real estate strategically. Similarly, just to set up this discussion today, are you thinking of a new location? You want to open up a branch or a warehouse or a sales office? We all know some things don't always work out. I'm not going to go into what can go wrong. Think about how you structure that lease. You know, and I'm using the example here. You want to go out and do a 3 to 5 year lease on a new sales office or a warehouse. I'm fine with a 3-year lease or even a 5-year lease, but negotiate a break clause. And even if you think it's an egregious penalty, that if I break after 12 months, that I owe you 6 months of rent, you can negotiate that down maybe to 3. You'll probably stay at 6 months, but that could save you 2, 3, 4 years of being in the wrong location. Point I'm going to get to a couple times in the next 20 minutes is, as CFOs, we're not trained to be real estate attorneys or real estate market prognosticators, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to bet you lunch, wherever you're at, that the attorney you use, either an in-house attorney, counsel, or your outside law firm you use, I'm going to bet that they're not an expert in real estate leases and real estate law. So my point is, you brush your teeth yourself, you go to the dentist, and you get your root canal done by a specialist. Do real estate the same way. You know what you know what you don't know. And when it's time to go to an orthodontist or a periodontist, go to a specialist. I'm going to tell you some interesting things going forward that I think you'll agree with me why you should do that. Let's talk about a lease. So the first point was, if you own a building, if you're leasing a building and you love the building, you really need to listen to this, because typical situation, whether you're doing the real estate management in your company, the CEO is, or your plant manager is for their location, if you wait until 6 months from expiration, the broker owns you, absolutely has total control over you, because even in a bad real estate market, you can't make a move in less than 6 months. And most of you probably agree with me. If your lease expires in 6 months, you'll probably get a renewal letter, not even a proposal, just a renewal letter telling you what your new terms are. Because again, they know you can't go to market. You can't give them notice. You can't move quickly enough. So at 3 months, they're going to hammer you up to market, and they're going to change any good clauses, any good language you have. They're going to take you to where they want you to be. So far, you're not managing leases strategically at that point. Typical situation is you're reacting to a broker. You're probably not in charge of the process in your company. You think somebody else is handling it. It's not quite your job. Well, that's normal practice, typical situation. Best practice is to get your third-party advisor who understands real estate and understands a couple of different points here, that they understand the lease document. Then maybe it's the same advisor, maybe it's somebody in their office, maybe it's another third party. Get somebody to review what the market's doing. Do you need 5,000 square feet that you currently have? Or do you really need 4,000 because of people working remotely, or that you're going to grow and grow and grow, and you need either a 6,000 office or an office with options to get the empty space next to it to grow to 6, 7, 8,000 square feet. Get an advisor to do that look, because they'll find things not on market. They'll know what's going on. Get these options. Key point here is get an advisor. Key point, start at least 12 months earlier, minimum of 12 months. Here's the interesting point, and I think this is a nationally valid statement. Get your advisor to understand your lease. So have a real estate attorney or a specialist who understands real estate lease language and what works for you, what doesn't work for your situation. But then get your real estate sales guy, for lack of a better term, your realtor. And even if you stay where you're at and you renew your current lease a year from now, and that's a 3-year renewal, your advisor gets paid by the landlord for sitting at the table on your behalf. So your landlord is basically free, or excuse me, your advisor is basically free. So why would you try to do this yourself? Why would you delegate it to somebody, or assume your attorney or your CEO or your plant manager knows what they're doing in real estate? Just get a real estate advisor, and you'll pay the one person to review the legal language. And the advisor you use from a real estate closing standpoint, or lease renewal, or a new lease, they get paid by the landlord. So that 2 or 3% commission, whatever that is, doesn't come out of your pocket. And oh, by the way, I'd like to hear if anybody ever did a lease renewal, and when you went to closing, they reduced your lease by 2% because you didn't have a salesman, an advisor, a realtor representing you. So they're going to assume you're going to do it yourself, take advantage of you, and you're going to pay that closing commission implicitly in your lease anyway. I'll tell you that one of our partners is a 35-year expert in commercial building leases. He will review your current lease or proposed lease, probably for $250 or $300, and he'll do it in 48 hours. And he'll find things your real estate attorney or your all-purpose corporate attorney will never, ever find. So there's a case where he's not an attorney, but I trust him more than I trust my attorney. Glad to introduce you to him. He's done work for us in probably 30 states. Tremendous experience, tremendous firm, and he's a guy we trust. Next point. Now that you've decided to either renew or go to a new building and sign a new lease, let's talk about how you can create value. This was explained to me personally from my engineering company a couple of years ago. Within 5 minutes, and this was a real estate private equity guy that explained it to me. And don't think like the building owner. Don't think like the real estate guy. Think like the building owner and his banker when you go to negotiate a lease. And again, keep in mind the building owner is either looking for financing for that building, or he's looking for a way to have it fully occupied with decent lease contracts in his backlog so he can raise the value and flip it. So that the building owner doesn't care about your roof or we all know this as tenants. The building owner only visits you when he wants to raise your rent or lock you in. So if that's what he wants, here's the short story: play his game. If you go in there with a 3-year lease or a renewal of a 3-year lease, he's going to offer you another 3-year lease because that's what he likes to raise the rent every couple of years and take it to market every couple of years. Think about a present value calculation. Think about the value of your lease. Let's make it easy. If you have a $10,000 a month rent and you have a 3-year lease, your value to that building owner and his bank is $360,000. They then make an assumption that 50% of those leases will exit in 3 years, and it's going to take them 6 months and usually $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to rehab the property so they can rent it again. So they look at, you've got a 3-year lease for $360,000. They kind of sort of get you to market at the end of the 3rd year. But if you leave and they have to go to market, it costs them $100,000 for that turnover. They don't like that $100,000 hit in the valuation of that lease, ergo the valuation of the building for either financing or market value. Longer leases trump lease rate. So once you know that, you want to figure out, and again, use my assumption. I've been here for 3 or 5 years. My lease option, my renewal option, my lease says another 3-year lease. Here's exactly what I went through 2 years ago. I was paying $145,000. My lease said I'm going to 155, 163, and 168. I could have said yes. That's what I would have agreed to. I took the advice of a advisor, and he said, offer him a 5-year lease. And by the way, this was it is a perfect building for my company. We're not going anywhere else. We're 10 miles from New York City. We're in New Jersey, on the right road for our customers, our employees. We're not moving back into New York City, so I'm going to stay there. So I countered with, I'll give you a 5-year lease, but I like this building so much. Okay, and I know you're going to replace the roof and upgrade the HVAC. So I want to talk about a 10-year stay instead of a 3-year stay. And we wound up with a 5-year lease with a 3-year option to renew, followed by a 2-year option to renew. So go back to my example. You look at, I think I've got it on the next slide here, folks. They agreed. Let me just check one thing here. Let me do this slide first. They saw me as a $175,000 cash flow tenant. What I offered him was $700,000 known cash flow, 3 years versus 5 years, with the possibility of another 450 and another 500. He viewed that as $1.7 million. He was literally talking to his bank about refinancing. When they saw he presented it to the bank as, I've got one lease worth $1.7 million. The bank was willing to loan him another $1 million. Okay, compared, they were looking at the 475, they do their LTV factor. They looked at the 1.7, they increased his building loan capacity by $1 million. And they said, we have a buyer who might be willing to buy the building for that. He sold the building for $1 million more just because of my lease terms. Now let's go back a slide. The owner agreed to my proposal, and two things amazed us. He allowed us to control if we renewed after the end of year 5 and after the end of year 8. He gave us, I needed an out, but the language he gave us was acceptable to him and the banker, that they knew I had the trigger, but they thought it was a very fair set of language. They also said, if you didn't renew right now, we need to replace carpeting, we need to paint the whole place, and we need to upgrade your employee break room. And they said, that's like $60,000 or $70,000. We really don't want to do the work. We're busy. So they literally gave us, on the side, they gave us a check for $48,000. Okay. We went ahead and upgraded the break room. We painted what needed to be painted. We cleaned and replaced carpet that needed to be cleaned or replaced. Our total cost was $25,000. Okay. We pocketed $23,000. You notice I said he gave us a check for $48,000 off the books. He did not want to reduce our lease by the equivalent of $48,000. He just wanted to write us a capital improvements check because he wanted his lease present value, his lease annuity stream to look like $1.7 million. We were fine to take his check. We cleaned up the break room the way we wanted to. Everything looked fine, and it was a win-win. You can do the same thing. The top bullet point here that I would take away as a learning is that CFOs tend to overthink this. We try to figure out, well, what kind of cost of capital does he have? How much equity does he have from his current building? What does he need to finance? And what's he going to finance it for? Bottom line is, we overthink things. I overthink things. I'm going to assume most of you also overthink things with building the right model, present value, his hurdle rate, our hurdle rate, his debt rate. We get all tangled up in that crap. Simple point is, realtors took one accounting class and one finance class. Bankers took 2 accounting classes and 2 finance classes, and they look at total dollars and a risk level. They don't get into present values. They don't get into all the crap we get into. Conclusion, keep it simple. I showed him something that looked like $1.7 million. Lo and behold, he agreed it was worth $1.7 million. And he was willing to give me well over $100,000 in return. So I'll wrap this machine gun summary up. You're not a real estate expert, so get an advisor. You don't understand the lease, get a guy or a gal who understands the lease. Do it now, not a year or not 6 months before your next renewal. Do it, understand your lease, understand your outs, then separately go get somebody to explain the market, look at your options, and give you your report. You can do a quick financial analysis that I just described. Frankly, if you're a nice guy, use the advisor to be the bad guy. Tell them we found a perfect property, we're willing to move, they're willing to pay for the move. We don't care that you're going to be empty, that we've been here 10 or 15 years. The market says we move. Let the advisor be the bad guy. You have to deal with the landlord for the next 5 years. I use the advisor as the bad cop. And keep in mind, end of the day, the advisor gets paid by that same landlord anyway. So let the advisor earn his money. I'm looking for chats or comments. I'll take a breath. Anybody have any questions?
And I'm keeping an eye on that for you as well. Nothing
Okay.
yet, but I'll let you know if they pop in.
So that is 25 minutes on how to manage real estate strategically, whether it's a lease or a buy. It's the same logic, same summaries. Get an expert in the contract language. They're not the same person. Your marketing's realtor cost is not going to be paid by you. Why not use them? So for those of you who are faced with a lease renewal in the next year, you're kind of out of time to get started. If it's 2 years away, start in a couple of months. And all these slides are on the website, but more importantly, there's an 1.5 hour slide deck that gets into the detail of everything from how to select the advisor, examples of language that you and I generally wouldn't see that traps us, or language we should ask for that a broker or a seller or a landlord is never going to suggest. So the whole purpose is a quick executive summary. You can go to cfosolution.org website, come in through Paul's PCS portal, and that gives you free access to all of our years of knowledge from our partners. So we'll take a breath. And 2 weeks ago, we pivoted to this topic. And oil's going from $85 to $115 to people talking about $180 oil costs. We said, let's pull together our experts and talk about 2 things. Number one, how to reduce your energy usage. Fewer kWhs, fewer barrels of oil and natural gas. And then once you reduce the usage, there's still that question, now that I buy less, how can I pay less per unit? So we're going to cover that in the next 25 minutes. So again, timely topic. I'm going to make the bold assumption that most people don't understand their power bill. Paul always laughs when I say this. Most CFOs and HR managers don't understand their healthcare renewal or their monthly invoice. Most plant managers and CFOs and procurement managers don't know how to read their power bill or natural gas bill or their shipping bills. So I have a real fundamental tenet. Procurement needs to understand what's critically important to your business: strategic materials, good suppliers, good service, quality, tech support. If you expect procurement to be a world-class buyer of telecom, healthcare, office supplies, electricity, natural gas, you're kidding yourself, because they don't need to be good at that. Let them do what they do best and outsource the rest is my message in life. So don't expect your plant controller to understand how to use less power or gas. Don't expect procurement to understand how to use less and certainly buy it for less. And by the way, we're no smarter than those 2 functions, so we shouldn't expect ourselves to understand that stuff either. So first best practice, humility, is once we know we're not the experts, go get an assessment done, either by your utility company or an advisor. There are firms out there, we work with them. Sometimes they're energy brokers, sometimes they're the utility, sometimes they're the experts in LED lighting or building design or controls or motor replacements, you can get assessments done very quickly, very easily. And the worst case that ever happens in getting an assessment done by an objective third party is they come back and tell you you're upper quartile and you're world class, keep up the good work. Odds are they're not going to say that. Okay, so next slide. Think about using electricity. As you walk around your office, your plant, your warehouse, just look around and notice that every light is on. Sometimes parking lights are on. Perfect example, daylight savings time, time of the year just checked, but your parking lot lights still come on at 5 o'clock. Okay, and they're on at 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, somebody didn't reset the controls. Then start to ask yourself, if you've got parking for 300 cars and you've got 100 employees, why you're lighting the entire parking lot, 12 hours, 13, 14 hours at night, when you should have every fifth light on. You can't do that in the old days, but you can put a control system in or sensors in that make sense. The rule of thumb is, if your lighting systems are more than 7 years old, you're 2 generations behind on technology. And we'll get to it in another slide, but I'll give you the answer now. Every generation is probably worth a 20% savings. So if you're 2 generations behind and you simply just change from halogen or fluorescent to an LED lighting system, you're going to look at a 30 or 40% efficiency factor. Couple of year payback before you think about some of the incentives and other incentives we're going to talk about. So that's the common sense walking around. Your IT guy is going to tell you, or gal is going to tell you, that people leave here at 5 o'clock, 5:30 at night. Every PC is on in the company. Every laptop is still on in their office. And yeah, the lights are turned on in the offices, but and even if the lights are turned off, the PC is still plugged in. So yeah, it burns power, but it also presents a security issue, both internal security and system cyber issue. So the IT guy wants, the PCs turned off, and locked down when people leave for the day or for Friday night. That's just good cyber security protection. It also reduces power. I went through this on behavior where people refuse to do it. So our PC guy just started our network guy just started locking down systems at 9 o'clock at night. He knew that no one was in the office. He would just remotely lock down any system that was on at 9. And he would make it a point not to take those phone calls until 9 o'clock the next morning, and basically say, well, the system shuts it down if you left it on, and I have to manually upgrade it. So I'll call you around 9:15 or 9:30. They did it once or twice. And then they started locking down their laptops and their desktops. Second point, take a look at controls upgrade. So we're still looking at reducing usage. How many times do you walk through your plant? Every conference room light is on. Every light is on for an office that somebody's on vacation or out for the week or traveling. And nobody ever turns their lights off. But more importantly, you go to the corner of the warehouse, you go to the storeroom, or you go to the lab, or you go to a utilities room, and the light bulb's on. And it might be on 24 hours a day. That's because they don't have detection controls or zones. You start to upgrade to LEDs. You can have 1 out of every 5 LEDs on in a warehouse or in a restroom. And as soon as they see motion at the door, they turn on the right lights. And after somebody leaves, 10 minutes later, they shut down. All done by the light, the light fixture or the sensor. Incredible payback. Frequently, the utilities will offer you an incentive. Finally, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, there's tax credits, special incentives and financing and discounts that if you do use efficiency upgrades, the utility will help you pay for it. Well, staying on the point of usage reductions, have you ever just had somebody take a look at Should we be powering these tools with electricity, compressed air, or running separate motors? Should they be tied into a whatever system? If you have a 20 or 30-year-old plant, if you started with a clean sheet of paper and redesigned that plant, you'd not only redesign the workflow and the sizing of the motors, you'd actually be making decisions between steam powered, compressed air, electricity, battery powered tools. Doesn't mean you can't do that analysis now. And you ought to be doing that from both the technology standpoint and getting back to cost. How does it impact your bill? On the second point, think about, again, if you started with a clean sheet of paper, do you have to air condition your warehouses? Or could you simply condition the air? There's a big difference. Everybody wants temperature controlled, climate controlled storage, but does the warehouse need to be 72 degrees? Is it fine at 80 degrees? And are you controlling for hot or cold, or are you controlling for humidity? There's different ways to dehumidify versus, air chillers. Second point, can you live with fans? The same big ass fan that cools the factory pretty well. Moving air is often better than using air conditioning. The rooftop air conditioning, $100,000 units that suck down electricity. Next point, think about in your home, your cabin, or other place where you need hot water. You just put a mini boiler in. Yeah, it's not cheap, but it only runs when you turn on the hot water. And in 10 seconds, you have 160-degree water for 5 minutes, compared to running a hot water heater for a factory or some other area. A lot of companies, a lot of factories still have change rooms and they have showers. So they have a hot water heater running 24/7. The plant may not be running, but you're running water because anybody taking a shower, wants hot water. A perfect place to just take that off the hot water system, take that off the plant system and put mini boilers in. Same thing with cooling zones for heating or cooling. So again, I'm not an electrical expert. I'm not a facilities expert. So that's why you bring one of those people in to take a walk through. We just talked about usage. Usage in electricity sets the peak power portion of your bill. You have two portions to your electrical bill in a commercial sense. You have peak power, how high your demand was at any given point of 15 minutes during the day or the month. And basically the power company reserves the right and they charge you for, well, if you needed 280 kWh at 7 o'clock Monday morning, the first of the month, you're going to pay for that every hour, every day of the month. So if somebody walks in at 7 o'clock in the morning and thinks they're doing the whole plan a favor, they go over to the master switch, turn every light on, every air conditioner on, and then they walk through the department and they power up every welder and every lift and plug in all the batteries for the lift trucks all at 7 o'clock. And you wonder how your peak is so damn high. Now, you can have an employee come in to manage that, both Monday morning, every second shift, every third shift, or you can buy a computer and do a power analyzer system that, hey, they know that you're not working Friday, the 4th of July. So it's going to power down as if Friday is a Saturday because they know that's a holiday. Okay. If you're shut down for a changeover or you're shut down for a snowstorm, you in the snowstorm situation, you call in and tell them we're on a weekend situation. If part of the plant goes in, they can always turn it back on. But these controls are thousands of dollars and they can save you thousands of dollars every month. So if you don't know about that, and I know enough to be dangerous because I've used these people and I've used these systems, paybacks are frequently 12 months. I talked about this before, LED lighting. 30–40% reductions are possible. You integrate controls in it. 50% reduction on your power bill for lighting is very common. More importantly, you get the really good light where your assemblers and welders need it. You get lower lumens in the storage area or the hallways or the bathrooms where you don't need state-of-the-art brightness and controls. For you folks in places like Arizona, Texas, where air conditioning is almost a year-round event, or if you've got a data center or an office that the windows and doors don't open, where you're always running air conditioners, in a gearhead standpoint, think about when it's 90 degrees out, your roof is 125, 130 degrees. So you're sucking in 130 degree ambient air to chill it down to 70 degrees. What if I told you, in gearhead analogy, that you could basically put a hood scoop on, like a dragster hood scoop. Okay, put a hood scoop on that air conditioner, 24, 27 inches in front of that hood scoop. And by the way, this is a patented hood scoop with all the controls built in. 24 to 27 inches in front of it, you have a mist of deionized water that reduces that ambient air from 130 to 110 degrees. So basically, your air conditioning unit runs much less. And if you actually design this into your replacement AC system or into a new building where you might have 4 50-ton air conditioning units on your roof, keep in mind, they each cost $100,000. They each weigh 8,000 pounds, 50-ton units. That's about the going price. What if I told you, if you put these hood scoops on and made these modifications, that you could go from a 50-ton unit to a 40-ton unit, which saves you $20,000. It's pretty linear, saves you $20,000 in capital, and you don't have to reinforce your roof because now instead of 6,000 pounds, it weighs 4,000 pounds. And you can handle that load on most building roofs without substructure changes. You wind up with 20 degree ambient air reductions, 20, 25, 30% reduction in your AC costs. Patented system, been around 20 years. Ironically, for many years, we've worked with this company for 5 years, 15, 20 years ago. In fact, up to 5 years ago, they did all their work in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, where it was dry heat year round. And I looked at them and said, do you realize how much we pay for power in New York City? That all these buildings are sealed systems in New York City, that they run air conditioners probably 9 months a year, and they run them as AC clean air systems 12 months a year. And we're paying 11, 12, 13, 14 cents per kWh. And they suddenly realized that, quote, northern seasonal climates can justify these retrofits or modifications just as easily as the dry heat in Arizona and New Mexico. So if you've got an AC bill, you got a data center, you've got an office, you've got a factory, and you run rooftops or parking lot AC units, let me introduce you to these guys. Next point. So we just talked, let's use that example. The modifications to each of those AC units is $15,000 or $20,000. By the way, they're approved by every OEM company like Crane and Fetters to put in layman's terms, to put this hood scoop and PLCs and water lines on their system. So it doesn't void the warranty, and they encourage it. It's just an additional expense. It's like putting a turbocharger on your new car. Okay. But for example, I just talked about, hey, to do that on all your rooftop units, put in the controllers, integrate everything, easily talking $100,000. You may not have $100,000 of cash sitting around. Your bank may not want to lend you $100,000, whatever reasons bankers have. We have a partner known as NEIF that is designed with subsidized funding from utility companies and social investors and some of the banks, where they have very low rate, customizable energy loans. So for example, if you go through that example where you spend $100,000 on AC reductions and you save $4,000 a month, they'll figure out a length of the loan and interest rate on that loan so that your P&I payment is never greater than your your savings per month from the utility. So if it takes a 5-year loan instead of a 3-year loan, they will do that. Interest rates 4, 5, 6%, and subordinated, collateralized only by the energy efficiency investment. Very, very friendly to work with, and they can loan directly to you. We had a session this morning, and by the way, there's incentives from your utilities, and sometimes your new supplier. So if you pivot from a local utility in a deregulated state and you pivot to a third-party supplier, they may be able to provide incentives that not only a lower cost, but they may be able to provide incentive funding or discounts for you to invest in energy reducing or peak shaving interruptible investments. So I take a breath there. Today we had a phenomenal presentation to our group of about 100 CFOs, where in Eastern Pennsylvania, our utility has just restructured their incentives for doing solar commercial panel setups of 25,000 square feet to 1 million square feet, where they offer a double incentive, basically first year funding, to make the investment subsidy very encouraging. It tips the scale to go to solar. Interesting part is solar panels have not gotten more efficient in the last 5 years. They've asymptotically bottomed out at photovoltaic efficiency, and they've gotten more expensive because they're coming from China between ocean freight and tariffs. It's actually, panels are actually more expensive now. Consider, I'm referring to 10 years ago, why this now makes sense, because they're more efficient. In the last couple of years, they're not any more efficient. Panels have gotten more expensive per square inch, per volt. So you literally look at, if you have an east-west or southern-facing rooftop, that's free space. The most efficient solar platforms are on rooftops, not freestanding in your backyard, in your pasture. The most efficient ones are rooftop. You've already owned the roof. From a load standpoint, they're generally not so heavy that they require, a rebuild in your roof. And all of this is available for incentives and funding. So coming back to a little bit of a summary here, how to reduce costs in utilities is, first of all, reduce usage. Nothing beats reducing usage of electricity or natural gas through a variety of technologies, behaviors, controls, closer eye. Then if you're in a deregulated state, and if I had a map of the country up here, if you literally colored in from Ohio to Maine, and it included Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all of the original colonies are deregulated, plus Illinois. So if you have locations in quote, any of the original colonies, they're deregulated for electricity and natural gas, which means you can bring a third-party supplier of electricity or natural gas through your pipelines, through your wire, and probably about 2/3 of your bill would be open to competition and different terms than your local utility offers you. And then add Illinois into the map. For you folks that live in Colorado, Florida, or California and use natural gas through a pipeline, not gas for your car or truck, I can't help you there. But if you use natural gas for your factory processes, heating, etc., deregulated gas is available in Colorado, Florida, and California. I come back to, I don't expect your plant managers to know that. I don't expect you to know it. I don't know it. I don't expect procurement to know that. Get a partner. I told you what states to look at. I'm glad to introduce you to our partner who can tell you what the pluses and minuses are in every one of those 14, 15 states and what the advantages are for gas. They'll do the assessment. Sometimes they'll actually find overbillings by the utilities, and I'll use my Pennsylvania example. If you find out that the utility company overbilled you for gas or electricity, in our state, you can go back 36 months without even a lot of proof. If they've been billing you for something, with a 36-month look back, they have to give you the cash for it. So what are some examples? Oh, Pennsylvania Power and Light is our Eastern Pennsylvania mega utility. They just raised rates 33% 2 months ago. And my sarcastic point was, did anybody budget for this in Pennsylvania? Of course not. Okay. Well, keep in mind, oil just hit $115 a barrel. Natural gas is up. So they'll probably justify another rate increase a year from now based on the interruptions and events we had in 2022. But here's the interesting part. Commercial and residential power went up 33%. Deregulated power is up about 8%. That's, again, are you buying in Pennsylvania, as an example, are you buying from the utility, or did procurement bring in a third-party supplier that went up 8%? Okay. Same thing happens on natural gas. Let me give you two examples. There's other case studies on our website. I'll just give you an example that was local. PPL is half of Pennsylvania. PECO happens to be the Philadelphia company. So if you're on the East Coast, you know what I'm talking about. But here is the example. The rate went to 8.9 cents. Literally, one of our buddies owns shopping malls. They were paying $90,000 a year. They went to the broker advisor I'm talking about here. This is a very current example. It's literally 3 weeks old. They were shocked when they heard it went to 8.9 cents. So their rate went, they were paying $60,000 a year. It went to $90,000. They were all panicked. They went out to the brokers, or I can get it to you at 8.19 cents net. Okay, so it's about a 10% savings. The CFO wasn't too interested. The broker called me and said, your CFO's missing the obvious. And frankly, he's pretty pissed off about the PPL increase, pardon my French. And what the guy doesn't understand, we just locked him in at a 5-year fixed rate at 8.19 cents. He's going to save a lot of money because PPL is never going to reduce rates. They're only going to go up in the next 5 years. I called my CFO buddy and said, would you look at the last 5-year increases, kind of guess it's going to be about the same, just to be conservative. And now all of a sudden, instead of saving $9,000 a year, you're saving $20,000 or $30,000 a year, going out year 3, 4, 5. You guys understand the arithmetic. I won't teach arithmetic and algebra classes here. Manufacturing savings, the guy that had renewed last August, they got him in at 7.1 cents. Okay, but they got him fixed for 36 months. So he actually understood that he locked in for 7.1 cents when the rate was 7 cents from PPL. He had no current savings. What he did was he locked in and he skipped the 33% increase. In his case, 20%, because he basically locked in over market, knowing market was going to jump. That guy was pretty smart. Same thing in the Philadelphia example, nursing home, was paying 6.39 cents. They locked in at 5.82 cents. Most of them would say that's only a half a penny, but they got it fixed for 36 months. Realistically, PECO hasn't had a rate increase for a year or two. They're due for a whopper. Why'd they do this? Because they went to a partner who understands the language, understands the market, and he's there. Now is the time to lock in. It's not going to benefit you a lot in 2021. You're going to thank me in 22 or 23. The interesting part, we've talked about contingency savings. In the past, it was very common for a power broker, if you saved, use my example, if you saved $9,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year, in my shopping mall example, that broker would have expected 50% of those hard savings for years 1, 2, and 3. The brokers have now pivoted. The brokers we work with and that we recommend and introduce you to, they don't do the 50-50 share. Frankly, what they get is 0.3, 0.4 of a cent from the utility company on an annuity model, and they've found out it's a lot easier rather than fight with a frugal CFO over a 50-50 savings to just take 0.3 of a cent for the life of the contract. And if you stay with them, that's icing on the cake. So short answer, my recommendation is if you're spending $1,000 a month in power and you're in any of those states I talked about, the original colonies plus Illinois, let me connect you with our broker because he's better than most guys on the street. He's one of the best in the country. And he handles 48 states for gas and oil, or gas and electricity. Natural gas, I'll use my local example. Guy was paying 61 cents, okay, $6,000 a month. Broker reduced him to 51 cents, 15% savings. You can't lock in the gas market for more than a year. So he did save him from a spike. It's just happened, but that, again, it's a 1-year look. But again, same pipe, same meter, different supplier, still delivered by UGI. He just gets 2 invoices instead of 1, but he's saving $6,000 a month plus the spike risk. Not a lot of money, but again, procurement's not going to figure this out. As I wrap up at 100 miles an hour here, bottom line for both of what I just recommended, don't expect procurement to understand real estate leases. Don't expect your corporate lawyer to understand real estate leases. Same thing for utilities. Don't expect your plant manager or procurement to understand it. And no offense to us, don't expect the CFOs and controllers to understand this. Get an advisor. I'll come back to outsource your specialty purchasing. The stuff that's commodity that you don't need to be smart on. Outsource telecom, utilities, shipping, supplies, benefits, 401k. You don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about it. Procurement doesn't. You know, the receptionist, the office manager, they don't know anymore. Just outsource it. In every company where I've worked in the last 15 years, I've generally been able to eliminate the junior buyer, purchase order, paper mover, eliminate that position by outsourcing these kinds. So I could actually reduce procurement staffing, let procurement specialize on what they're good at, get them specialized and trained, and outsource all the rest and reduce my cost probably 20-25% overall and eliminate the overhead component of it. To learn more on anything we've talked about today or for the last 7 years, go to cfosolution.org. You'll see a portal. We call it the West Coast portal, also known as the PCS Advisors portal. If you click through that, it will take you into the Library of Congress and all of the 70-some 1.5 to 2-hour work sessions, slide decks, videos, and it'll also take you to the executive summaries, such as the one I did today. If you've been in there before, and if you're there next month, you'll notice we're making it a little more user-friendly by putting a table of contents and an index that makes it easier to find, to surf around the 70-some white papers and Zoom recordings and slide decks that we have in our history file. And then frankly, if there's anything else that is keeping you up at night or you just don't know, give me an email or a call, because there's my contact information and email. Give me a call because we have about 1,500, 1,600 subject matter expert partners or best practices documented in one form or another. I'll give you an example. In our facilities, what we talked about today on energy savings is one of the 5 sub-chapters on facilities. So today I took the chapter on facilities management, pulled out the strategic, financial side of real estate. That's like a half a sub-chapter. And then I took out the chapter on energy. We have 3.5 other chapters just within facilities. I think we have 45 or 50 best practices just for facility management. So I'd encourage you to look at that. And if we can help you, it's our pleasure. And that's my last slide. I hope the 45 or 50 minutes was worth your time. I thank Paul for his group support of trying to get CFOs together and share best practices. If you have ideas for future topics, or if you have great ideas from what you've discovered works and people you recommend that we should know, please feel to reach out to me. I love hearing from everybody.
Thanks, Gary. That was a lot of value in a short period of time.
Yeah, I'm about to lose my voice from doing that for 2.5 hours today. But
two versions.
well, if you go to the real estate, or excuse me, the power one, it actually has 20 minutes on how solar works, where it works. You know, it's almost a cartoon version of DC and AC power, but it also gets into roof loads and field arrays. And it's got a couple of user videos that frankly do a much better job than I could do. So I encourage people to, if you're the least bit interested in solar, from 25,000 square feet to acres and acres of solar, you'll be amazed at the financial case studies. And I had one case where it was a 1-year payback. Typically it's a 4 to 5 year payback, and you're green and you get LEED credits. And it's kind of the right thing to do. I think most employees and stakeholders would encourage solar when it's done efficiently and financially responsibly.
Right,
So,
right. Well, we'll make sure everybody gets a follow-up email with links to everything that Gary's referenced from our time together today. And we'll also put in a question in this follow-up for any topics you'd like to see covered.
great. And again, we're on the third Wednesday of every month, this time slot, and it's available by Zoom. So we're here for your viewing pleasure. So
All
Paul,
right,
thank you.
good.
Paul, enjoy the beach time with your kids, your wife, and I'll go back to work here.
That sounds great. Thanks again for your time.
All good. Take care.
Bye.